And Obama says, I want the father to speak, and then if the mother has anything to add, we'll let that happen. And they didn't even listen to him. She spoke, and then he went up and speak, and you could see Obama's face, the way that he reacts to Bo Bergdahl's father speaking in Pashtun. Like, he wasn't expecting that to happen. And then he addresses the Afghan people directly. And that's what, the son was there that he was so disappointed about, because he thought he was going to help the people of Afghanistan. And then he gets there and finds out that's not the case at all. So did his father at some point become a sympathizer with him as well? Or, clearly, like, he's got the
Well, that is Stockholm Syndrome. This could just be Stockholm Syndrome, that more and more people, and Americans are primed for this now, that when they're under an oppressor, they tend to start worshiping the oppressor. And that explains the worship of our big, fat, out-of-control, evil government. That could be it, too. It could be he's deep cover to infiltrate the group.
Well, that was my first instinct. That was my very first instinct.
I know, that's what you told me Saturday. Yeah.
Well, because I didn't know who they were speaking about, and then I just see him, the man, come out and speak Pashtun and say, thank you so much for everyone that's helped. And then I was like, man, that guy's deep cover. That's deep cover right there. That they're getting his kid out now, who had gone to such lengths to assimilate into this network, and then his father as well. That's to me, that's my first instinct.
Well, show that Breitbart article real quick, if you don't mind. And it's titled, Did the Obama White House Trade 5 Terrorists for Taliban Sympathizer? And it says, in 2010, the Taliban claimed that Sergeant Bo Bergdahl had converted to Islam and had taught them bomb-making techniques. Bergdahl had also changed his name to Abdullah. This is very comparable to the Tale of Sergeant Brody and the Homeland show on Showtime.
That's what, I'm glad you said that. I was thinking about that last night and forgotten. That's what the angle we need to look at here, because I'm telling you, they have this narrative on all these shows like Homeland and cartoons and everywhere, that the vets are going to be the terrorists, that the vets have all turned to Taliban, they've all turned to Al-Qaeda, they're all going to attack you, which is ridiculous. So they have to manufacture it then in this narrative to make the troops and the Tea Party the new Al-Qaeda. I've been writing articles for 6 years about how they were going to claim white Al-Qaeda and claim this narrative, because we got some of their internal documents that we published, obviously. And then here we are, saying why we don't trust it. That's because our subconscious has all this data we've already covered in thousands of shows, and now it's bubbling out. That's the angle right there, Biggs. You just hit it.
Right, exactly. Well, we were speaking on Saturday, just watching this, and Biggs is like, well, the real story is the fact that we traded these 5 terrorists for this one soldier that's going to set an awful precedent. But less than 24 hours, usually the media would just say, well, Obama says this guy's a hero, case closed, let's move on. Less than 24 hours later, they are already, all these articles with all this backstory saying, did we just, rescue this guy who had defected anyway? And so they were immediately going with this different story. And so I was talking to Biggs, like, we've got the photos that surfaced of the first white suicide bomber, and how this was foreign policy, I believe, who's saying that the big fear is that Americans teaming up with Al-Qaeda affiliated groups will return to the U.S. to conduct terrorist attacks. And so now they're kind of pulling in this whole story.
Well, I was talking to my buddy yesterday, Jason Leopold, and the FBI likes to call him the FOIA terrorist. And, I wanted to throw a few of these things by him as well. And one of the things he had mentioned was, he's like, remember that email you got from Hastings? And he said that the FBI was coming after him and were looking for him. And I go, yeah. He's like, I think this is what it was about, because if you remember, Hastings' last article was America's Last Prisoner of War, and it was about Bo Bergdahl at the time. And
wait, it's all coming together.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten you'd said that. You need to get your buddy on the show. Can you do that?
Possibly. I'll give him a call again today and see what he can do.
Well, let's do it tomorrow.
Yeah. But
this is, wait a minute. I forgot. Hastings did an article about this. You were just mentioning it. Oh my gosh. This really, oh my God. Right. So what does your buddy think?
We all think this is connected now, with the death and all that as well. He honestly thinks that the FBI was after him because of this, and shortly after his death, he says, the FBI released a statement saying we have nothing to do with this. But after many FOIA attempts and all that, it's come to light that the FBI was looking into him because of his interest in Bo Bergdahl, and they found it very disturbing, and they called that controversial journalism.
That's right. And you talked about this months ago on the show. So here we are talking about Bo Bergdahl and this months ago in association with Hastings' death. And we know the FBI visited his house, or we know the Fed showed up. We know his wife, who you went to the funeral, who you knew, said that, she was mad and upset. Then she goes on CNN with Piers Morgan and says, everything's wonderful, like a Stepford wife. I mean, this is really starting to smell.
It's coming full circle.
And she was the head assistant to the National Security Council. I mean, that's the top of the pyramid. That's the top of the black box government. I mean, that's who runs Homeland Security. That's who runs the dictatorship. That's it.
I mean, this whole story stinks. I don't believe a lick of it. It's another...
Well, it's like you said, Hastings would be in, like, bombs and missiles blowing up in huge battles with you, and he was just totally relaxed and smiling. You never saw other journalists that acted like that. And, you've said on record you think Hastings was some type of operative.
I mean, he was down in there. I mean, and another thing, though, as well, though, is he thought that, for a while, he thought his wife was almost kind of sent there as a mole, too, to
well, of course,
spy on him.
Spies are going to have spies on each other. I mean, this is just out of control. We're going to go to break. We're going to come back with your phone calls directly, straight ahead. We're going to go right to your calls to give your take on this in 2 segments. Then we've got another guest coming up and a bunch of other news. But Infowars.com and our team is hot on the trail of finding out the truth. It doesn't add up what Obama is telling us. I know that's hard to believe. He would never lie to us.
This hour of GCN programming is proudly sponsored by BlockItPocket.com. Enhancing your health and protecting your privacy and data. BlockItPocket.com. Use your phone safely and minimize radiation. Find out how at BlockItPocket.com.
Harvest Right is the world's first in-home freeze dryer. Freeze dry your own fruits, vegetables, meats, and full meals. With Harvest Right, you can prepare foods that last 25 years, preserving its freshness, nutrition, color, and taste. All your food can be freeze-dried. So don't throw away your leftovers. Freeze-dry them with this incredible in-home money-saving freeze dryer. Go to HarvestRight.com to see how the Harvest Right freeze dryer works. That's HarvestRight.com.
This is Michael Steger, candidate for Congress in San Francisco. There's a vote this Tuesday. If you want to send a message to both political parties and their Wall Street backers, here's your chance. It's time we impeach Obama. He's like Dick Cheney, but worse. Torture, spying, wars, bailouts. He's a disaster. He went straight to Wall Street and never turned back. Next, pass Glass-Steagall just like Franklin Roosevelt and shut down Wall Street. It's time to put some bankers in jail. Then, go back to the policies of John Kennedy, reignite our space program and fusion research, and initiate big projects like water development to end the drought. You want a future? You want a nation you can be proud of? Then it's time to stop complaining and get out and vote. Tuesday, June 3rd. It's not about you. It's about the future. And now is the time to fight. This is Michael Steger, and I have approved this message.
This message has been paid for by the Michael Steger for Congress campaign.
Hi, folks. Alex Jones here with some important information. I want to tell you about Matt Redhawk and his team of patriots over at My Patriot Supply. Several years ago, Matt was sitting in his 2-bedroom apartment, frustrated with the direction this country was headed and the charlatans willing to sell us out for a quick buck. Deciding to take action, a company run by patriots for patriots was born. My Patriot Supply has never taken a loan or accepted outside funding. They now operate 2 distribution facilities and employ over 50 hardworking American men and women. It is rare to find companies who practice what they preach. And that's why I stock my pantry with high-quality storable foods from My Patriot Supply. Go to mypatriotsupply.com/Alex today for special offers on emergency food storage, or call their preparedness specialist at 866-229-0927. That's 866-229-0927. Do business with someone who shares your values. mypatriotsupply.com/Alex.
This hour of GCN programming is proudly sponsored by BlockItPocket.com. Protect your privacy and data and render your phone or device completely undetectable. Go under the radar when your phone's not in use with BlockItPocket.com.
It is Monday, June 2nd, 2014. We've got a call from Afghanistan whose line keeps dropping, probably a sat phone. Mark in Afghanistan, Army contractor. What is your take on this? Then Chris, Joe, Sean, Billy, and others. You're on the air. Thanks for calling. What is your take on this story?
Well, I was talking about this thing with a couple of my friends today, and one of the guys actually went to that base that the guy left from. And the guy, when he was there, the guys that were there, the troops that were there were telling him about how the guy walked up, laid his gear down at the gate, and walked out. So you were wondering about whether this story is actual or not. Yeah. The guy walked up, laid his gear down, and walked away. Told him, I'm going home. And then the first sergeant there came up to the guys and said, why did you let him leave? And they were like, well, he's a grown man. What are we going to do, shoot him? You know, so, yeah, the story where the story is true about he walked up and walked out.
Wow. Any other tidbits or any other questions you'd like to ask this fellow, Biggs?
No, not at all.
Well, I mean, that's what they're saying. People in the unit are saying on CNN. So this is blowing up in Obama's face. Caller, Mark in Afghanistan, what does your gut tell you is going on? Did your buddies that were at this base, did they have any idea what was really going on more than just saying that it looked like he went AWOL?
No, it just this guy just flipped out the way that he done out here. You know, you have one guy that flipped out and then you shot a bunch of people up. You have this guy that walked away. You have people out here capping themselves. I've heard soldiers talking about other soldiers capping themselves. You know, and they're kind of like, well, why? You know, I mean, for the people that have been out. I mean, I've been out doing jobs. I'm an employee of the military-industrial complex, if you will, and I've been out where base has been attacked. You know, and I don't know, I just didn't get rattled like some people do, I guess, but some people can't handle it. But why they do what they do, I don't know. Nobody really.
Mark, very interesting information. Thank you so much. Joe in Connecticut, Army vet, what's your take on this?
Hi, Alex. You know, one of the first things that I wondered, because I mean, I've been following this story since the beginning when he did walk away from the base and soldier flipped out and went crazy, I was wondering how he got off, but he wasn't captured by the Taliban. Sergeant Biggs touched on this. Like, the Taliban wouldn't keep him alive for 5 years. Unless he assimilated into them. They would look at him as the infidel, less than nothing, and immediately dispatch him. I mean, they wouldn't keep him alive for 5 years, but I find the timing of it so funny because it just totally takes the heat off the VA scandal and everything else. Like,
bingo! It totally changes the subject off the VA. Oh man, I tell you, these callers really are putting the pieces together.
I mean, one of the things though too, when I was in Iraq, I remember watching the video of one of the soldiers having his head sawed off. I mean, that is a chilling image that will never leave my mind. And the last thing I would ever do was walk off of a base because I know in the back of my head that I could get my head chopped off. I know if I fell behind in a ruck march, I could get my head chopped off. You know,
well, my cousin was telling me about how
off of a base is because you know you have nothing to fear. That's another scary thing is he walked off the base and didn't even think, all right, I'm gonna get my head chopped off. The Haqqani network is known as the Sopranos of Afghanistan. I mean, these are bad guys. They run.
Well, I was about to say my cousin was given backup to these medevac helicopters, where there are all these burned kids on a road. And when they got there, they'd burned their own kids up, and then they came out with bombs to try to blow them up. But they'd already figured it out and landed their helicopters further away. But, I mean, that's the total brainwashing we're talking about here. Amazing. Thank you, Staff Sergeant Joe Biggs. Thank you, Joe in Connecticut. Yeah, this diverts off. I guess it's the new Malaysian plane story from the VA scandal that was absolutely exposing them. Chris, Sean, and Billy, your calls are coming up. Stay with us. Oh, and then Pachinik. Pachinik's coming up, folks. Pachinik wants to chime in.
Visit
8 after next hour. Then we've got other people coming up. From the water table to our soils to the atmosphere itself, our world is becoming more and more toxic each and every day. But it's not just the air outside that's toxic. Indoor air has been shown to have 2 to 5 times higher concentrations of pollutants than even outdoor air. And most Americans spend 90% of their time inside using toxic chemicals within their homes. There are more than 42 million smokers in the United States. Well over 1,000 types of mold and mildew linked to numerous conditions. And don't forget the fact that 6 million Americans live with pets they're allergic to as well. When I began to research these statistics, it was clear to me it was time to start cleansing my lungs in order to combat the toxic environment that we cannot escape